You probably heard that DC Comics are planning on killing off the Justice League in issue number 75. In all fairness, they pretty much killed off the Justice League as soon as they put Brian Michael Bendis on the title. But that is a video for another day. We've seen the images. There are all types of monuments being erected to the Justice League. It looks like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Aquaman. I think there might have been Flash in there. Have all died in issue number 75 as we're heading towards some type of future calamity. Some might call it a crisis event at DC Comics. We've never seen anything like that before. And this is all meant to be something very important and very big and very, really, what it is very desperate. DC Comics are desperate to do anything, to pop a number, to get people into comic shops and actually buy their books right now. Sure, they have their successes here and there, but there's so much Batman right now. They're leaning so heavily on one character that they've got to do something to reinvigorate and bring in some type of excitement at DC Comics. Because if you're reading DC right now, it's not exactly an exciting comic book line. Sure, there's a good Flash book. There's a good Damian Wayne story. There's even a pretty good Action Comics that no one knows about starring Superman. Because there's only one Superman that's important to DC Comics right now, and that's John Kent, not Clark Kent. That's why it's so easy for them to kill off the character unceremoniously, this issue number 75, and act like it's the biggest thing that's ever happened. We're doing an homage to the death of Superman 30 years ago. That's what it's all about. That is not what it's all about. Issue number 1, and I've been talking about this for 9 months, maybe a little bit longer here on the channel. DC Comics has been strategically getting ready to replace almost the entire Justice League. Clark Kent is out of Superman. We've got a new Superman, John Kent. Guess what he is? Bisexual. Well, that's better. We got a little representation in there. We're likely going to see the death of Bruce Wayne, at least in the Justice League series. Do we think that we're not going to see a Batman comic starring Bruce Wayne after this is over? I'll get into that. But we've got him replaced too. We got him replaced by Jace Fox. Now we have a minority Batman. Now that is better. Because now we're replacing these straight white male archetypes. And those are bad for business, aren't they? We've got a new Aquaman that's taking over. Jackson Hyde certainly has been in the universe for a very long time. But we've known for almost a year now that he's replacing Arthur Curry as Aquaman. We have so many Green Lantern right now, it's not even funny. Hal Jordan, I don't know, is he even in the game right now? He's just sitting on the sidelines while John Stewart and Teen Lantern and JoJo Mullen's fine ass are basically taking over the Green Lantern Corps. Guess who they're going to kill off in this one? It's going to be John Stewart. So JoJo Mullen will be the new Green Lantern. They've been systematically setting up these replacement characters for our old, tired, problematic heroes that everyone knows and loves. They're saying you're not going to see a Justice League comic. Well, you're going to see something. You are going to see a team-up book, and it is absolutely going to be with these replacement characters, because this is what DC Comics has been building up to for a very long time. It's the same thing that Marvel Comics did not that long ago with the all new, all different Marvel Now, whatever you want to call it, Marvel Legacy, where they kept trying to replace their problematic longtime heroes with more diverse, acceptable versions of the heroes. Because DC Comics and Marvel Comics, it's not the characters that matter to them. And that's where the difference between the publisher and really the creators and the readers, the people that are actually paying these asshole salaries and are actually buying their drivel in hopes of actually reading a good comic book in the next 15 years, the people that are putting their money down, we care about the characters. We care about what the characters represent. They care about the mantles. They see these mantles as empty vessels that they can shove whatever they want up in it and say, this is what Superman is, or this is what Batman is, or this is what Wonder Woman is. This is what Green Lantern is today. It's no longer what you determined and you've been spending your money on and investing your time and your emotions and your patronage in. It's about what we want to do with these characters, because what we want to do in our agenda is more important than what you've invested in. That's the factor number 1. Factor number 2, we do have this Warner Brothers Discovery merger going on. Obviously, DC is a subsidiary of Warner Brothers. They're coming along with the package. DC characters and settings are very important to the Warner Brothers HBO Max brand moving forward, and are going to be very important to Discovery. There's a good chance that who's ever in charge, and it's not going to be somebody from Warner Brothers, the new head is going to be from Discovery, isn't a dumbass and realizes that these characters are very, very important. And once they get in charge, the dipshits at DC Comics aren't going to be allowed to just wholesale wipe out all the most important characters in their entire comic book universe, which obviously transcends comic books now. It's on the big screen, it's on video games, cartoons, streaming shows, and whatnot, and just replace these characters with new improved versions. Approved versions. They're not going to let them do that. So you got to do it now. It's desperate. You have to do it now, because if you don't do it now and you don't make these changes now and you don't replace these problematic heroes that have to be replaced, if you don't do it now, you're never going to be able to do it, because there's a good chance that the people in charge of Discovery that are going to be in charge of Warner Brothers aren't gaping assholes. They're not stupid. They're going to see the plan. They're going to say, no, you can't do that. The rumor is that they're doing the exact same thing over at Warner Brothers with DC Films. Yes, we're going to replace out Superman with Supergirl in the Justice League. We're going to replace Batman with Batgirl in the Justice League. They are probably into production on this, and this is probably the plan. I cannot see this ever going through, because somebody competent is actually going to be in charge and see this and say, no, you're not going to ruin our billion-dollar franchise with these stupid changes. Unfortunately, comic books are small potatoes in comparison to films, streaming, and whatnot. So they can probably sneak this stupid idea in with the hopes, and it's a sliver of a hope because it's never fucking worked before, that it works, it boasts sales, and when they get over there and the Discovery guys, well, what's going on with DC Comics? What are they doing? What's the direction? Like, well, we just replaced all the heroes, and look, we got sales. People are excited. They want this new version of Superman and Batman and Aquaman and Green Lantern. And hopefully, this is them right here, hoping that the people in charge of Discovery are actually dipshits and aren't going to see that they're rooting future potential and the earnings of these characters and what they can do with them. They are so desperate right now, because if they go over to Discovery with Batman in their hand, because that's all they got right now, right? That's the only thing really selling at DC Comics. We go, well, we got lots of Batman. Well, how many Batman comics are you selling? 39 a month. 39 new Batman titles. They're going to look stupid. So this is a very desperate attempt to push an agenda and do something, anything, so when they arrive at Discovery with this merger, that they don't look like the incompetent dipshits that they really are. And that's what this is all about. Of course, they're pushing another agenda, and it looks like this is moving towards another crisis. We'll get to that here in a second. But right now, with the executive team at DC Comics, which has been gutted, admittedly, when Daniel Cherry came on board, they essentially wiped out all their executives at DC Comics, and now you've got Jim Lee and Marie Evans, essentially, and a few others. They are so clueless what their brand is. They are completely clueless who their customers are. They are completely clueless as to what will sell their comic books. And they are just shitting in the wind and allowing themselves to be duped and to be made to look like fools, because they have really terrible editorial and even worse creators for the most part across the board. And that is what's really going on with DC Comics. Now, there were a few quotes, and I've got some holes to poke into this, and I want to say this up front. I personally have the deepest respect for Joshua Williamson. I think he is one of the few things going at DC Comics right now, creative-wise, that's a plus. Obviously, he's a company man, and he's going to have to push this the way that they're going to sell it. They're going to sell it as one thing, but we know what it is. We've been talking about it here on the channel for 9 months. They have to replace these characters. They are problematic. They've been moving towards this for months now. They are desperate. They don't want to look like the fools that they are when they come over to Discovery. So they're doing something, to pop a number, but also to push forward their agenda, which they've been doing for months now, for well over a year. At DC Comics, they have been trying and setting up this opportunity to replace all their heroes. Obviously, in DC Future State, which was originally 5G, that was a trial run. So this is what Joshua Williamson had to say about this, and I do have a few comments, shockingly. It's very serious. It's an interesting opportunity to do this on the 30th anniversary of the death of Superman, which happened in Superman 75. We get to take the Justice League 75 and do Death of the Justice League. We want people to understand This is serious, and this is going to have a major impact in the DCU moving forward. It's not serious. You can't take quotes like this serious anymore because they've been selling these changes so hard for so many years. They are empty promises. There's no way that this is going to have a major long-term effect on the DC Comics universe because it's not going to sell. If it does, well, then it will because they won't bring him back. But it won't. It's been proven to be a loss leader at this point. It's not going to work, and then they're going to go back on it as soon as humanly possible, just like they always do. I understand what you're saying, Joshua Williamson. I respect you. And you say, you got to understand this is serious. No, you have to understand. No one takes you seriously. It's not you. It's DC Comics. It's Jim Lee. It's Marie Evans. It's Dan Didio. It's Bob Harris. It's all the bad actors and incompetence for over a decade at DC Comics, other than DC Rebirth, that have led you to this point. You can sell me whatever you want, but you will not piss on my back and tell me it's raining. I don't take this seriously, and no one does, because they know it's empty, and there will be no long-term ramifications whatsoever. Next quote. I remember the experience of reading the build-up to the death of Superman and then waiting in the rain for my copy of issue 75. I think one reason that story was so powerful was that the funeral of For a Friend story, there was no Superman comics for 3 months. No, the reason it was so powerful is because you read the buildup and it compelled you because it was so good. It's so invigorating. And DC Comics hadn't sold you a bill of goods so many times that you knew everything that they were promising to that point wasn't empty, that you went out in the rain and you stood there, got soaked wet so you could get your copy of 75, Superman 75 before anyone else. There's no buildup here. Sure, they've been building up to it as like a structure. We know what they want to do, but they haven't been building up to this. Is that what Brian Michael Bendis' Justice League has been? Is that what you want to tell me? No, the exciting part wasn't that for 3 months there wasn't a Superman comic. The readers didn't know at that point that there wasn't going to be. The exciting part is that they had invested and they had read the story. They read the buildup and they were anticipating for it. They knew they didn't want to experience that loss, but they knew they couldn't miss it because it was going to be important. Because DC Comics hadn't let people down so many times up to that point. Got to remember, Hal Jordan was still dead. You got to remember, Barry Allen was still dead. When DC Comics said that they were going to kill a hero at that point, you thought that they were going to stick to it. At this point, the idea that they would is an absolute joke. Last quote. Ever since Infinite Frontier #0, we've been building to this story. Last year was a lot of fun and games, but when this story starts, it's the beginning of the third act. We're going to see things get darkest before the dawn. The Justice League get called in to fight this dark army that's been building on the edge of the multiverse. They go up against the dark army and they lose. I've seen this story before. It's called Dark Knight's Metal and Dark Knight's Death Metal. We've seen the darkest before the dawn. You're basically repeating the same stories over and over again. We saw it in Scott Snyder's Justice League run. And you say, it's been a lot of fun and games last year. Well, I fucking missed out on that part because I've been reading a lot of shitty comic books for the last year. You have no goodwill. And I don't mean Joshua Williamson. I'm talking directly to DC fucking Comics. You do not have goodwill at this point. You don't get to say we had some fun and games last year. We really didn't. Future State sucked. And pretty much everything after Future State has been pretty mediocre at fucking best. You have made wholesale changes across the board of characters that we love. You've been doing things to push an agenda at the expense of the readers. And you think I've had fun and games with you the last year? Fuck you. And that's basically the way that you can sum up my thoughts on DC Comics killing the Justice League. It's desperate, it's hollow, it's empty, and I could see it a fucking mile away. Death of the Justice League wasn't the only crazy thing to happen to DC Comics within the last 24 hours. Daniel Cherry III, their senior VP and general manager, actually just up and quit to go work for Kanye West. If you haven't seen that story, it's right here. You definitely want to stay up on all the DC news because it is a shit show right now.